So when we think about how fraudsters are using synthetic AI, I'd actually start breaking this into two camps. Now, firstly, from an industry perspective, we often think as deepfake as being synthetic artificial intelligence. However, it's not really. So when we're thinking about creating, for example, fake IDs, fake reports, fake addresses, fake credit card numbers, and all these kinds of different things, on the one hand, the industry has this huge focus on deepfake technology. Now, deepfake technology is essentially the use of artificial intelligence to manipulate pre-existing imagery and iconography and so on and so forth. Now, when we think about the defense systems, a lot of defense systems will increasingly try to identify Gaussian effects, distortions in the pixels, they will try to identify individual watermarks that have been left by the deepfake AIs that have created, for example, a synthetic face. However, what we're also seeing is the rise of artificial intelligences which are able to generate content and IDs and essentially any kind of video, iconography, imagery, and so on and so forth from scratch. Now, when we think about this from a defense perspective, when we're trying to identify a piece of deepfake content, we are trying to identify color correlation imbalances. We're trying to detect pixels that are actually out of place. We're trying to detect minute distortions in the images that we're actually sucking in. However, if you're using a genuinely synthetic artificial intelligence, which has generated those images from scratch, literally from a blank digital sheet of paper, shall we say, then quite a lot of those don't have those distortions. So as we start thinking about the future, there is the how do we defend against deepfake threats, which is the manipulation of media, versus media that has been freshly created from scratch. And then in addition to that, when we actually think about these systems, over time, these systems become pretty much perfect. It's this kind of game of cat and mouse. Now, one of the best ways to try to create perfect media, depending on what you're actually doing with that media, is you use a single artificial intelligence to create an image of a face, for example, and then you use a generative adversarial network to analyze that face for all of the things that a fraud detection system will try to identify. And then you manage those out. So increasingly what we do is, in the future, is we start using artificial intelligence to vet the quality of our fraud work and then improve it. But it can do it at extreme speed, extreme scale, and again, produces a very challenging environment for everybody involved.